Alright, look. Did I have fun playing Poppy Playtime Chapter 2? Yeah. Was it better than the first chapter? Well, it was longer, so probably. But man, do I have a gripe with this game. And just a quick note, we're not talking about the developer drama or anything like that. I'm not in tune to it. Go watch someone else for that. Today I'm just talking about the problem I have with the game itself and how we can fix it. Real quick, hi, I'm Rytoast. I stream on Twitch and I make videos about horror games here. So let's get into it. Oh, and spoilers ahead, obviously. Look, I want to establish I'm not just some sort of hater who just is dismissing the whole franchise. I had a lot of fun with Chapter 1. It was short, sure, but it had some good horror. And I enjoyed my time playing Chapter 2. I just don't think it was scary. Like, they forgot to make the game scary. To contrast its issues, let's talk about Chapter 1 instead. Because frankly, I never did on this channel. It's good. The controls worked well, and the puzzles are satisfying, but never too hard. I thought the slow burn to Huggy Wuggy being this huge creature lurking around the facility until eventually going after you was great. And that reveal before the chase sequence is amazing. It's one of my favorite types of scares in horror. Jump scares work, sure, but a slow-walking creature just emerging from the unseen is amazing. And the way this massive creature has to duck under the doorway is just a great added bonus. It really gives me the same vibe as the tall man from It Follows. Frankly, a boring movie, but it does this concept super well. Now, to address, like I said, the game is incredibly short. It's like 3 puzzles, some walking, a chase sequence, and a cliffhanger. Now, I understand it's only 1 chapter, and it's only $5, but it is lacking in content. But I was willing to look past that, and I was really excited for what this game had in store. Alright, so as we've established, I like the setting, I like the premise, and I think Chapter 1 was good horror. Chapter 2 wasn't scary a little bit. For those of you who don't know, which again, big spoilers, the basic structure of this chapter is we actually get to meet Poppy herself, who's actually friendly and helpful to us, trying to get us out of the factory using a train that brought kids in and out. However, we're interrupted by Mommy Longlegs. Yeah, they knew what the fuck they were doing with that. I'm more of a Mommy Thick Thighs guy myself, but she kidnaps Poppy, and with it, the code to activate the train. However, she tells us that if we beat all 3 of the games she used to play with the children, she'll give us the code. With no other options, we play them, each game being sabotaged by Mommy to be impossible, and having deadly consequences if we lose. We can manage to survive the first 2, but at the end of statues, there's no way to win. So instead, we escape and run. Mommy, furious that we cheated, suggests one more game of hide and seek, which is essentially a long chase sequence with some puzzles in between it. Eventually, we catch her in a grinder in a very graphic victory scene. Mommy gets dragged into the unknown by the only scary thing in this chapter, this 9-looking motherfucker, and then we meet back up with Poppy, tell her we got rid of Mommy, and get on the train to leave. To our dismay, Poppy betrays us. However, with much less malice than anything we've met so far. She says we're perfect, as we were able to defeat Mommy, and she needs us to end what's been going on here before she can let us leave. She then diverts the train deeper into the facility, and it crashes and we pass out. Roll credits. I guess we'll start with the positives. For one, there's a hell of a lot more content here. I think it took me about 2 hours to beat on stream, which is where I'm showing the footage, and you should totally check it out with the link in the description. Which, for a single chapter of an indie horror game, that's pretty good. That's a better amount of time for $10, even though they said every chapter would be $5, but then the second chapter came out and they made the first chapter free, and then made the second chapter $10. So while yes, it's $10 in total still, everybody already bought the first one, and they didn't offer a refund. That's not how this works, mob games. The addition of the green hand allows you to do a lot more complex puzzles, and they really do up the ante on them. At this rate, if this game is going to have 4 or 5 chapters, I can see the puzzles near the end being actually fairly difficult. And that's one of the strong suits of this franchise so far. It's very puzzle-oriented, with the hand electricity thing. Another good thing is that there's stuff to do in here besides just puzzles and running. The Simon Says minigame is great, and it has some decently funny moments, and the threat of Bunzo literally looming over your head is a fun motivator. Statues is easy enough, but it still has a fun concept to it that I actually haven't seen in many horror games. It's like a freeze dance style obstacle course with a slow-moving creature following you. Huggy Wuggy was fun, if a bit infuriatingly hard. I've seen a lot of people struggle with this one, myself included. I mean, I couldn't really beat it until I cheated by turning up the brightness and turning down the fog, but I beat it. I love the lore that was teased in this game. I'll probably have a speculation video out soon as to what's coming up next, and I will say, like I mentioned, this right here, what's that? Ayo? Ayo? That's scary. whatever the fuck that was, it's creepy, it's intimidating, it's mysterious, and it makes me want to see more. This is the peak of the chapter, and it's scarier than anything else in it. Which leads me to my problems with the game. This chapter isn't scary. Like, not in the slightest. But why is that? Well, the first main issue is that the monster design is pretty weak overall. As far as the side monsters go, we have Bunzo, who, besides these tiny little sharp teeth, is basically just a bunny. We've got PJ Pugapillar, which, can I be honest? This is adorable. I love him, I want to protect him. Look at those little legs go. And then we have the Huggy Wuggies and Wacka Wuggy. They're like miniature versions of the one we've already faced, and they don't have teeth. So they took away the two things that made Huggy Wuggy scary. It doesn't work. We then have Mommy Longlegs herself. I get that her spider-like appearance and weird crawling is supposed to be the fear factor here, but it doesn't work. We see so much of her, and if you see all of her, she's not that scary. Her face is never scary, not in the jump scare or in the chase sequence. There's a little bit of a creep factor when just single limbs pop out of areas to either try to grab you or give you things, and that's where she shines, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But when you see all of her, she just isn't scary. Now, the worst part about the lack of scares in this game is that it could have been actually really scary. They could have even used the exact same monster designs. They just didn't utilize them properly. To look at what I mean by this, let's take another look at Chapter 1. Looking at Huggy Wuggy in a vacuum, even with his size and teeth, purely the design isn't that scary. The horror comes in how he's used. We first see him in full scale, but without the teeth, and he's just kind of a statue. But once we leave and come back, he's gone. Immediately, the threat that something is watching us is established. Throughout the chapter, he's slinking around with a hand here or a noise there. Every room is threatening because you're never sure when he's going to show up. Just know that he's somewhere nearby. You're in all of these tight, cramped spaces with turns that you have to make and still nothing. And then, in an albeit dark but mostly innocuous hallway, he just shows up, and the chase sequence begins. Then immediately, the juxtaposition of this slow walk to the frantic crawling is great. The noise of his slinky limbs coming after you in the vents is great, it's good horror. So how does Chapter 2 handle its creatures? Well, let's look at Mommy Longlegs as the emblematic example. She first appears by just one hand coming out of the hole and yoinking Poppy. That's good. And then immediately she reaches out and rips off one of our gripper hands. That's great. And then she reveals herself entirely and explains exactly what she wants and what she doesn't like. This sucks. For the rest of the chapter, there's a threat, sure, but we know exactly where she is and exactly what she wants. This chapter is really reminiscent of Portal 2 and how GLaDOS keeps putting us in challenges trying to kill us and making fun of us the whole time. That's a fun dynamic, but it's not scary. They show their hand way too early, and then they play the rest of the game with it clearly laid out on the table. This can be seen everywhere. Look at Bunzo. He's basically a glorified spike ball being lowered. PJ crawling on the ground is too cute to worry about. And the mini Wuggies are threatening, but they slowly emerge from a tube and then jump. It doesn't work. Okay, I hear you. How do we fix it? Well, Mob Games, get out your notepad. I hope you're listening. This is coming out of a place of love and respect for what you've created. It's fun, but I think it could be scarier. And for a horror game, I think that's what you're going for. And I'll do it for mostly free of charge. I only ask for a one-time payment of a check of about 1 like and subscribe, and if you could make that out to a Mr. Shameless Call to Action, that'd be great. Everything up until Mommy's first appearance is great. Keep it as is. But once she grabs the player's hand, just have that slinked hand slip back into the dark ceiling. Then descend just Poppy, held by the hand that nabbed her, and either through a corrupted fake Poppy voice or a note attached to her, tell the player, I've changed my mind. If you want the train codes, you have to play for them. Then open the door. When you get to mediocre melodies, have the training video tutorial stay the same, but don't have Mommy say anything. Just keep a silhouette in that window, just a head with a long, twisted neck. After you win, have a new voice whispered just behind the player. You broke it. As they turn around, have the head of Mommy just slipping back out of view, so they can see something moving, but they don't see what. And then the hand descends to give the note like in the base game. However, now, when you're looking up to grab it, you notice Bunzo is no longer there. Now, this storage room isn't really a puzzle. It's just kind of a cramped lore dump area with a claw that you have to drag all the way through it. This is the perfect spot for Bunzo. Have the room work exactly the same, but when you turn on the power that allows you to move the claw, have the lights short circuit so now it's dark. The claw can glow and has a spotlight, and you can see a few feet in front of you, but that's it. And then, the cymbals start clapping. The challenge now is to drag that claw through the zigzagging shelves while avoiding Bunzo patrolling in the dark, the platform where the power and dino are being a safe spot. Now onto Huggy Wuggy. This one would need more of an overhaul. I think the best way to make this segment scarier is to just change what game it is entirely. Introducing Don't Get Hugged. Think a circular room with a big hole in the middle, a few impassable walls with vents in them, and a grapple. You can keep the mini Wuggies, but have them writhing around in a mass in that pit. Now just have one big, toothy Wuggy up with the player. Again, Mommy isn't gonna say anything, just the instructional video will play, explaining the goal, which is, avoid the big Wuggy without falling in the pit, grappling across when you need to. Now I hear you. What's stopping the player from just holding onto the bar? Well now, the onlooking Mommy is only showing her head and one hand through the silhouette, both very stretched out. If you hang on the bar too long, her second hand comes out from one of the vents and rips off your grabber hand like before, making the first time not just a good scare, but now a warning and foreshadowing. Eventually, a piece of floor will fall out, and now the way to break out of the rigged game is to get Wuggy to fall in. Once done, the floor hole closes, and you hear another whisper. Why must you make my children suffer again? This would allude to a possible lore thing, but that's kind of leaning into speculation, so take it or leave it, Mob Games. This time, no head, but a hand holding another piece of code hangs out of the vents. However, before you leave, the growling and writhing of the mini Wuggies under the now closed floor stops entirely. You can have the Kissy Missy encounter and the track puzzle afterwards be the same, but once you break through the wood, it becomes a mini chase sequence, as a horde of those mini Wuggies are now clambering after you through tight vents. Eventually, you encounter a grapple and get away safely. Now, statues. This one is mostly fine the way it is. The game itself isn't the problem, it's PJ. And PJ has a good design, but his animation makes him look too cute. Right now, when he's on flat ground, his little waddles are just too distractingly adorable. PJ works best as a horror thing when slinked like this or crawling on vertical surfaces and ceilings. So I'd want him to do just that, having him flat on the ground as little as possible. Just adjust the pathing of how he chases you. The ending of how this works is just the same, but this time, you escape through a series of maze-like tunnels, with PJ still following you. Eventually, you get away and Mommy confronts you. I like the idea of this scare, but I just want to tweak it. Instead of all of her flying down at you, have the bar just be broken by her, and then her upside-down face pops out screaming. And then she has her "you cheated" speech. Have her slowly crawl down, bent backwards the whole time. Finally, I'd want to tweak hide and seek as well. As it stands, it really is just a chase sequence with like 2 puzzles and 2 hiding spots. I think it'd be best if you immediately entered a huge room with plenty of nooks to hide in. She finishes her count, and if you're hiding, she walks past and leaves the room. The room has a multi-step puzzle where you're looking for molds to make gears that need to be placed on a specific order on the wall to open the door. All the time you're in here, however, Mommy's footsteps will occasionally sound off and get louder. This is your warning to hide again because she's coming back to find you. Then once you get out, the rest of the game is fine. The grinder's great, the hand, Poppy, the train, that's all fine. I think this would drastically improve the fear factor of this game. With a creature like Mommy, you really want to tease the idea of her before showing your hand. Frankly, when you see all of her design, the fear factor goes away. But if you just see a hand here, a voice there, stretched out limbs where you didn't expect them, that's where Mommy works best. I honestly think her reveal was really done dirty. So, Mob Games, take this to heart. I know you want to show off your cool creatures and get the fun merchandise for it, but wait just a little bit. You're not giving them the justice and the reveals that they deserve. Also, do you need a writer? Because this is pretty much a resume, an application, if you will. You know, I'm available for hire. I have a bachelor's degree in English. So that's my main qualm with Chapter 2. I still liked the game. It was fun to play, but it just wasn't scary. I mean, am I wrong? You can let me know in the comments if you were scared. The only time I was scared was literally that hand. I was like, oh, that's creepy. I like that. You know, that's it. I'll probably do some sort of speculation video on the game, but until then, shout out to the best patron Emberisk. And until next time, stay toasty.